Distinguished members and friends, welcome to our webcast on World Investment Report 2023, prepared by United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD. I'm Serkan Volandova, the Secretary General of the International Investors Association, YASED, and we are honored to be your host today. As you know, the World Investment Reports are one of the premier publications that provide insights into global trends in foreign direct investment, with a particular focus on global value chains and sustainable development. These reports offer detailed information and profound insights about FDI flows worldwide, capturing regional and country level differences. They also serve as the main reference for numerous studies, including our own. Today, we have the privilege of launching this highly anticipated report simultaneously with its global release, thanks to our esteemed colleagues at UNCTAD who have diligently prepared this important publication. We are delighted to have with us Mr. Engin Aksoy, Chairperson of YASET, and Ms. Amelia Santos Paulino, the Chief of the Investment Issues section at UNCTAD, who will present the main findings of the report. Mr. Chairperson, Ms. Santos Paulino, it's a great pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me again. It's my pleasure
Thank
and
you.
honor.
Thank you, as always. And before we delve into the details of this year's report, which focuses on the theme of sustainable energy, I would like to remind all of you that we have a questions and comments feature of our Insights platform. If you have any questions for Ms. Santos Paulino, please use that feature to submit your questions. We will gather them during the presentation for the Q&A session. And now it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Engin Aksoy, the chairperson of YASET, to welcome our distinguished guest and deliver his opening speech. Mr. Aksoy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Serkan Bey. Thank you very much. Esteemed members and distinguished guests, it's a pleasure to be with all of you today. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you to this special session following the launch of World Investment Report for 2023. For the fourth consecutive year, we are broadcasting the release of this report in Türkiye on the same day, accompanied by a senior representative from UNCTAD. On behalf of the Asset Board of Directors and our members, I express our sincere gratitude to Ms. Santos Paulina for joining us today. Having you here to share the main findings of this report is truly invaluable for us. Thank you. Despite some positive developments in 2022, such as the easing of supply chain pressures compared to the COVID-19 period, ongoing geopolitical uncertainties have continued to pose risks to the global investment market. Factors such as the war in Ukraine, exit policies from expansionary monetary policies in many advanced economies, financial uncertainties, and expected recessions in several developed countries have influenced the global investment appetite in 2022 based on our observations. Most recent numbers on FDI flows at global level also reflects this drawback, with 1.3 trillion dollar US dollar performance pointing out almost a 12% decrease from 2021's 1.5 trillion dollar US dollar. Apart from the aggregated amount, destinations and sectoral composition of FDI are also of great importance for us. We closely monitor the shifts in supply chains affected by regionalization trends, lately inspired further by friend-shoring or ally-shoring agenda. Technology investments providing high value add and know-how to the host countries became more and more important to us, as they also attract highly trained workforce, which all our members are in great need. Sustainable development, friendly investments supporting green transformation are also in our radar as we integrate more with EU's Green Deal initiative, which is very important to all of us. We are content with the increase in clean energy investment at global level. However, we also notice that there is much to be done in the wake of COP28 to catch global targets set in Paris Agreement. We find it timely and important that UNCTAD selected sustainable energy as the main theme of this year's report. We are looking forward to hearing the progress in this specific area. For Turkey's FDI outlook, I'm happy to state that YASET members continue to realize the most efficient investments in all these areas and the spearheading in increasing Turkey's competitive power and sustainable growth. Turkey, according to our official statistics, attracted 13.3 billion US dollar of FDI in 2022. This corresponds to 1.03% of global FDI inflows. Considering 1.5% share target of the government, which we believe is realistic and reflects the true potential of Turkey, we need to do more to attract more FDI. Our stakeholders know by heart that, as YASED, we continuously implement comparative studies that highlights Turkey's competitiveness in attracting and also sustaining FDI. We believe that macroeconomic stability and regulatory predictability play a key role in our country's FDI performance. Our research and member surveys also show that these are the main factors that affects investors' perception of our investment environment. In addition to sustaining these core requirements, ever-changing nature of global regulations and increased competition among countries in providing the most suitable and competitive investment environment require us to continuously improve Turkey's regulatory framework. We, as Yaset, pursue a long list of agenda items backed with detailed policy proposals that would lead to a more competitive investment environment in our country. We strongly believe that realization of our policy proposal will result in increased FDI inflows to our country, as our most recent member survey, YASED Pulse, indicates a potential of 7 billion USD investments among our members should the enabling conditions improve. For all our research and analysis, today's focus, the World Investment Report, offers unique insights to understand global trends and position our country accordingly. This comprehensive report serves as a valuable resource for policymakers, investors, and researchers alike, providing in-depth analysis and understanding of the evolving dynamics in the global investment landscape. By studying the report's findings, we always have gained a deeper understanding of the opportunities and challenges presented by global trends, enabling us to make informed decisions and take proactive measures to improve the business and investment environment in Turkey. In conclusion, it is crucial to have a holistic view of the global investment landscape, as it undoubtedly has an impact on Turkey beyond its own dynamics. We are grateful for Ms. Santos Paulino's presence today and eagerly look forward to hearing her comments. We also look forward to be together with UNCTAD management and team in YASET International Investment Summit, which will be held in September in Istanbul, and also in UNCTAD World Investment Forum to be held in October in Dubai for further exchange of information and know-how. So with all this, I would like to invite Ms. Santos Paulina to take the floor and present the World Investment Report 2023. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like, as I said at the beginning, to thank YASED and the membership and the directors and the team for having me again, especially to share with the investors community on the launch of the World Investment Report on the same day to share with you the main insights and to launch a discussion with you. I'm happy to answer any questions at the end. Please let me know if you can see my presentation, which should be off now.
It is. We saw it.
It is perfect. Thank you so much. So I'll go back to the beginning. So in the introduction remarks already, you saw what is the main focus of the report, that is investing in sustainable energy for all. And this is both a very timely and a very important issue because it covers one of the core areas of the Sustainable Development Agenda, and also because this year we are having the World Investment Forum just ahead of COP28, and it will be a platform where we are going to bring together all the investment stakeholders to discuss what are the issues and what are the challenges and what are the inequalities in terms of investment in sustainable development, and with a focus on the energy transition. But also this year, the report presents a very important analysis, and that is a review of the investment needs at the key investment need at the midpoint of the 2030 development agenda. We are 7 years and a half to the 2030 deadline to meet the SDGs, and there are significant challenges. And as we show in the report, foreign direct investment plays an important role. So basically, my presentation, I will focus on the key trends, both regional and sectorals, and I will explain a bit what happens in terms of sustainable development investment. Then I will highlight the key issues related to national and international investment policy. And then I will zoom in the issue of the topic of the report, that is investment in the energy transition and investing in sustainable energy for all. So if you please allow me, I will first start with the trends. And as it was said at the beginning, the global macroeconomic and political condition in the world had affected and had conditioned what the trends that we present in the report. And the prospects last year were extremely gloomy for foreign direct investment, as we know, because of the rising inflation, the challenging macroeconomic condition, the fears of a recession, and turbulent financial markets all had an impact on investors, especially leading to investors' uncertainty around the world. And when we analyzed the different type of investment, we saw that many investors put their investment decisions on hold because all these extenuating circumstances. So one of the highlight trends that we show in the report is that, as I said, the prospects were gloomy, leading to investors' uncertainty. So basically, this led to a decline of global foreign direct investment of 12% in 2022 to 1.3 trillion. So this decline, and here I present 4 different types of flows. So I have what is the values of foreign direct investment, greenfield projects, which is an indication of investment sentiment, international project finance, and cross-border merger and acquisitions. So we see here that the trends are different according to the type of investment. So basically, the decline on global FDI was mostly due to lower volumes of financial flows and transactions in developed countries. And this you can see in the reduction in cross-border mergers and acquisitions. And also, we see that investment trends in general were more positive, and with growth in what is called project announcement, greenfield projects in developing regions. So basically in most regions and sectors. So this is at least a good sign, because despite the uncertainty that I mentioned, there was an increase in the number of project announcements, as we can see on the first quarter on the left. FDI in developing countries increased only marginally, although, and when I mentioned inequality at the beginning of my talk, this is what I referred to. It was mostly concentrated in few large emerging economies, and basically inflows into what we define as structurally vulnerable, weak economies, into smaller economies. The inflows were stagnant. So FDI to LDCs actually declined. So as we point in the report, global FDI retreated, but new projects announcement showed a bright spot, which is good news for structural transformation efforts in developing countries. So in general, the picture is mixed, but just to summarize this slide, the news in terms of greenfield investment and project announcement is slightly positive. So here, in terms of what happens across regions, and here is also, as I said, the picture is mixed. First, we see the decline, mostly due to a slowdown in financial transactions in the form of mergers and acquisitions. In Europe, in particular, when we look at developed countries as a whole, Europe FDI were affected by fluctuations in the major conduit economies. And those economies that are not the end point of foreign direct investment. So basically, this was the driver of the slowdown in Europe. In the United States, inflows fell by 26%, and mostly because of halving the mergers and acquisition were halved, and this also drove the trend in the US. So this is as I said at the beginning, financial transactions between corporations drove this trend. When we go into developing countries, actually, as a group, we see an increase in FDI inflows to developing Asia, which is usually the motor, the engine of global FDI remained flat at 662 billion. And those in Latin America increased by more than 50%, and which is a record level. This was mostly due also to the energy transition and natural resources market. Inflows to Africa, and again I refer to the group of structurally weak economies, fell by 44%. Following the anomalous peak that we observed in 2021. Basically, this was led by a large reconfiguration of a corporate group in a project in South Africa. So another good news for developing countries is that developing countries accounted for more than 2/3 of global foreign direct investment, up from 60% in 2021. So basically, as I said, there is a challenging global macroeconomic and geopolitical conditions, but and the impact of this multidimensional crisis especially hit food and energy, and also countries with financial and debt distress. And this is something that we go back into in the theme chapter, the issue of high cost of debt for developing countries. But this affected mostly the poorest country, and they affected them disproportionately. And sometimes when we are in an emerging market situation, that we forget about the interconnections in terms of value chains, in terms of supply and demand, and how important is that all countries grow in this process. So in terms of vulnerable economies, as I mentioned before, for least developed countries, many of which are trade partners of Turkey, inflows fell by 16%, and they continue to account to a meager amount of global FDI, only 2% of global FDI, which mirrors the low share of trade of least developed countries in the global economy. So this is a development concern for UNCTAD and for the international community as a whole. Yes, so this is in general, the general picture. Of course, we have the first chapter that goes into detail into the different industries, sectors, and regions. We also have the online chapter. But now, if you allow me to, I want to zoom into an important analysis of the report that in the last 3 editions we have been covering, and is the issue of investing in the Sustainable Development Goals. So this year, what we did is that we compared what happens in terms of project activities with the previous year, but also to the trends of what happened since the launch of the Global Development Agenda, the 2030 Development Agenda in 2015. So many of you might recall that in 2014, the World Investment Report presented a novel analysis of what is the investment in sustainable development goals related sectors. As we know, we cannot quantify every single SDG and target, but we try to map out what are the major investment related sectors. So here, we see that international investment activities, that is the number of projects, both in greenfield and international project finance, increased substantially in 2022, but the growth remained unbalanced when we look across sectors, and especially when we look what happened in terms of agri-food systems. So basically, international investment in the SDGs increased, especially infrastructure, energy, water and sanitation, and agri-food system, health and education also increased number of projects. However, if we compare to 2015, as I said, when the SDGs were adopted, the progress is modest and is marginal in comparison to what would have been given the prominence, as our Secretary General said today. SDGs are too big to fail, but still there is a gap. So basically, a review of the, in addition to quantifying and analyzing what happened before and after, we also present a review of the investment needs at the midpoint of the 2030 development agenda. So when we did the analysis in 2014, this gap, that is the investment gap to increase to meet the SDGs was 2.5 trillion. That was the estimate on the eve of the SDG agenda. Today, at the World Investment Report, we show that this gap has increased to more than 4 trillion per year. And the largest gap, when we look at the gaps, are in energy. And this is particularly important, and we will show later that the gap in energy accounts for almost half, or a little bit more than half, of the total gap of 4 million. So basically, the largest gap are in energy, water, transport, and transport infrastructure, areas where international investors have an important role to play. And the increase was both the result of underinvestment and additional needs. And this is something very important in terms of both investors and development discussion. And then the issue is that this growing gap contrasts with what we see in the capital markets, where we see a positive and increased trends in sustainability and what is a sustainability theme products, at least in terms of bonds issuance and sustainability related capital market products, as I will show later. So there is a contrast here, and we need to see how this gap could be closed and how funds can mobilize from the capital markets to the real sector and to the down on the ground, to the economies down on the ground. So this is more or less, I would love to go more in detail, but due to time constraint, it's just a general paintbrush of what happened in terms of the SDGs. So headline is that the gap increased from 2.5 to $4 trillion. So here, this slide brings us closer to the topic of the report. In the report, we show the growth that we had observed over the last years in international investment in renewable energy slowed down in 2022. We saw that greenfield investment announced doubled, but international project finance deals, which are usually more significant for large infrastructure projects, declined. So this was the driver of this slowdown. Another important issue is that, so basically we saw that international investment activity in renewables, in renewable energy, has nearly tripled since 2015. But again, going back to the issue of inequality, this rapid growth has been mostly confined to developed countries, particularly Europe, where policy support has provided a push, as I discussed last year when we presented the report, and before, because of the COVID stimulus package, when GVCs basically stagnated. So basically this policy support provided a push for large infrastructure projects in Europe. In developing regions, the growth in international project finance and greenfield projects has been much more gradual. And basically, it has outpaced GDP growth, but only marginally. So it's not catching up with the economic activity. So investment in the productive infrastructure is not catching up with the growth in these economies. And in LDCs, for example, in least developed countries, which again are the most vulnerable set of countries, renewable from international sources has lagged GDP growth. So basically, LDCs has been the number of renewable projects increased by only 1%, where our GDP has grown almost 7 times faster. So my message here and our message here is that we need a more widespread growth of investment in energy transition. So there is a high concentration still of both sources and destinations. So we need to have a better distribution of these flows. So this is we have a very rich set of trends and analysis on the different types of energy transition. I will not have time to go into them, but I will invite you to look especially at our analysis on the needs. We work closely with other agencies like ARENA, the International Energy Agency, and we work in collaboration to present the numbers in these different sections of the report. So if you allow me briefly, because also we have a wealth of analysis in terms of investment policy developments, both national and international. If you allow me briefly to refer to what happens in terms of policy making. So basically, we show that investment policy making surged in 2022. That is, more favorable national investment policy measures were undertaken to counter unexpected economic slowdown. So this is part of the story. In the report, as usual, we look at the activity, as I mentioned. So in 2022, the number of measures, the favorable measures to investment, reached 102, nearly doubling the previous years and basically regaining the pre-pandemic share of total measures. So we see the fork is opening, an increase in positive measures and a decrease in negative measures that might affect foreign investment. This is in terms of national policies. When we go to international policies, here we can see that for the third consecutive year, the number of treaty terminations exceeded that of new international investment agreement. Last year, in 2022, countries concluded 50 new IIAs and effectively terminated 58 international agreements. So this brought the universe to over 3,265 treaties, which more than 2,500 are in force now. So an issue of concern to UNCTAD is that still the network of international investment agreement is dominated by old generation treaties. And this is an issue that we will bring to the World Investment Forum and we continue working strongly to analyze. They are characterized by overlapping commitments and inconsistencies with the global sustainability imperative. And sometimes these agreements act as a deterrent to investment rather than promoting investment. Right. And for us, it's a concern because this represents a risk of climate action and also the energy transition. These issues need to add an urgency to the reform of the IIA regime, and this is something that for your community is also very, very important. So unfortunately, I don't have time to go into details, but we have a very rich analysis also on the different type of policies towards the energy transition, because something that we show on the last chapter is that sometimes countries have more targeted policies without passing from an energy transition plan or having a proper strategy to the transition. So this is one of the contributions of the report. But if you allow me now, I will briefly go into the capital markets issue, which I mentioned before. So basically, a key message of the report in this sense is that sustainability-themed investment remains resilient despite volatile capital markets. So remain resilient and sustainability-themed funds continue increasing. So what we show in this figure, which is have become a feature of the report in the different years, is that sustainability funds had positive net inflows, while traditional funds experience net outflows. So there is more sustainability-themed products out in the market. In particular, the issuance of sustainability bonds also continues to expand, and it has grown fivefold over the past 5 years. And the key priorities of the markets is one, to increase exposure to developing countries and addressing greenwashing concerns, something that also we have been analyzing in the report. There is a lot of self-reporting in this sector, so greenwashing remains one of the concerns in the agenda. So basically, in terms of the value of the overall market, including bonds, funds, and voluntary carbon markets reached 5.3 trillion in 2022, despite the turbulent economic environment that affected real investment, that affected foreign direct investment. So as I said, remain resilient. So this is an area that we will continue analyzing and assessing through our research product, but also our advocacy programs with the Sustainable Stock Exchange and through the institutional investors program. Just quickly here. So as I said, the bonds market continued to grow, but the issuance of new bonds in this particular case decreased by 11% in 2022. So basically, from the whole universe, green bonds remains relatively resilient, decreasing only by 3%. So in general, what we see here is that there is a scope. There is a scope for the market, and also especially because of, as I said before, the categories, the different categories can allow to address different issues in the market. So the sustainability, the mixed sustainability bonds decline, but the issuance in general continue to increase. So it's a sign of resilience. Finally, here in terms of the capital market, we see that stock exchanges are still playing a major role in promoting responsible investment. And we also, in terms of responsible investment, we look at the 3 parts of the ESG, economic, social governance, including gender equality. We look at the role of capital market infrastructure, such as stock exchanges and derivatives, and how important are in the whole investment chain. So basically, in 2022, we looked at training. We saw that training topics became the most common sustainability activity, and it also has to do with the work that development partners are doing alongside what is called the UN Global Compact. Now let's go to the theme of the report. And as I said, it's a very important topic, very timely, and one issue that has been overlooked in the whole investment discussion is how expensive it is for developing countries to attract productive investment and investment into the energy transition because of the high upfront costs, and also because the cost of debt and the risk associated with many countries to this type of projects. So I already alluded to the fact that international investment has tripled, but investment needs for the transitions are enormous. We show in the report that much more is needed. So basically, while investment in renewable energy has grown, other sectors, and this again for this community is very important, other sectors relevant for the transition, notably energy infrastructure, still observe much lower involvement by international investors. So this is an important issue to discuss. We look at different elements of the transition, as I mentioned, needs, the concentration of the renewable energy value chain, and so on. But what we wanted to do also was to place the FDI discussion in the context of the energy transition. And this only confirms the important role played by foreign direct investment. In the renewable energy sector, international project finance accounts for 55% of global project finance values. So only in renewable energies, 55% of IPA goes to these sectors. And this share increases for developing countries is exceeding 75% in LDCs. However, in one of the areas where this inequality is more evident, as we see in this graph, is that if we see countries with low access to energy, they have received almost no project on renewable energy. So countries with high access to energy receive 50 times more projects in energy transition that countries with low access to energy. So for the poorest countries in the world, attracting international investment is crucial prerequisite for a timely energy transition. And as I said, this is a matter of concern. In the report, we show that today, 31 developing countries, including 11 least developed countries, have not received yet or have not registered yet a single utility-size international investment project in renewable energy. So 31 developing countries. So which is a significant number, given that we have been on this agenda, and every year we go to COP, to the Conference of the Parties, and there are pledges and there are national determined contributions. So this is a matter of concern. And as I said, developing countries where almost all the population has access to electricity have received 50 times more international investment in renewables in per capita terms than countries that have no access to electricity, which is a matter of great concern. So a great contribution of the report this year, which I was very proud to be involved on, it was to take a step back and because every year we will, especially last year and the year before, we look at the components of investment, the role of international project finance, and what are the bottlenecks for developing countries to attract bankable projects, or to design bankable projects and have a pipeline of projects. So one issue, something that we did this year, was to deep dive into the energy transition and look at what are the key factors that drive investment decisions about new infrastructure, especially in renewable energy. And this is driven by various factors. I mean, those that know about key performance indicators, and you that drive your corporations, your enterprises, know that you look at economic, regulatory, technological, and environmental. But there are, in terms of the energy sector, there are other issues like national security concern and other challenges, especially end users, potential sources of energy, that makes the analysis more complex, and also the decision of the investors to go into a different country or to go to a specific country. So especially the political context matters, including energy security concerns and the energy transition strategies of this country. So for us as a organization that provides technical assistance and capacity building to the countries, is very important that they know what is needed, and we try to see how much investment features into these energy transition plans. So basically, this was the background of our analysis, and then we went a bit further and see what drives the energy decision and how costly it is for developing countries to attract to have this type of investment. As we all know here around the rooms and the table, investment decisions depends largely on the cost of capital. This is a well-known fact, and financing decisions and borrowing costs for investors in sustainable energy projects depend, as I said, on country-specific factors, but also to industry and project risk. And this explained, we went into a very detailed analysis of the different type of projects and the cost involved. So, and a key outcome of the report, a key message, is that partnership matters for developing countries. And many might say, okay, this is not new, but yes, what is new is that how much the cost of capital, the cost of debt and equity is reduced by countries pursuing a partnership. So for example, in developing countries, on average, bringing international investors lowers the spread on debt finance by 8%. If in addition to the international investor, a country adds a multilateral development bank, it lowers it by 10%. And then combining international MDBs and government stakes in the project in terms of traditional PPPs or other type of more modern type of partnerships, it can lower the cost of debt and equity by 40%. And this includes also new type of partnerships like the Belt and Road Initiative, and this is an important outcome, because this is the vehicle. That's why you see that in least developed countries, we see that 75% of IPF goes to renewable energy. So basically, while the increased use of this type of public partnership has many challenges, and given the negative experiences of developing countries in the past, but still the potential to lower the cost of capital is enormous. So it's imperative for us that countries have to put in place the institutional capacities and safeguards to ensure they work in the common interest. So this is a point that we made very strong in the report. So now we have seen a drive in multilateral development banks towards sustainable energy and infrastructure assets, and so it's an important issue for discussion, and I think we need to continue bringing this to the forefront. Another issue that we do that we analyze in the report in significant detail, as I mentioned before, we have the international community, in addition to the SDG agenda, has the COP mechanism, which meets regularly and bring together leaders, stakeholders, investors. And since the Paris Agreement in 2015, there has been a drive for countries to present what is called the National Determined Contributions. That is the national plan for the climate change agenda and to achieve net zero. So we did a very detailed analysis with the goal to see how much investment need features in these plans and how much energy transitions are realistic with the net zero goals. So basically we analyzed and we saw that 147 developing countries do have indices. Over 100 have detailed targets by 2030 and 2050. And out of those, 78 have precise energy targets. However, when we go into the investment, which is our core issue here today, only 48 have a specified investment requirement. How much do they need for the transition? You cannot do the transition if you don't know how much. It will be more difficult. And out of these, only 40 have a specific investment sources of finance. How do they plan to mobilize this investment? And this include the top three that we have identified includes NDBs and international financial institutions, government and domestic public incentives, and private investors. So here we see the enormous potential that there is for private investment for the energy transition. What we need is to help countries to identify these sources and to mobilize these funds. So I will wrap up here because I know that we want to have some time for discussion, but in addition to the wealth of analysis that we present, we try to understand the challenges and what are the possible responses to those challenges. So in the report, we identified a set of key challenges for international investment in the energy transition based on the analysis of foreign direct investment, project finance, and all the sustainability trends. So basically, the solution that we present is a global action compact to respond to the challenges of international investment. So it includes both national and international policy issues, and then guiding principles that could help both countries and investors to navigate the challenges, including climate goals, ensuring energy security, and a key issue here is partnerships, international partnerships, investors partnership, and cooperation, and also financing mechanism tools, and that includes the sustainable market. Before I wrap up, I have to say that one important, we look at real life projects in developing countries, and something very interesting that we saw was the connection between sectors and policies. Like in the case of countries like Laos or other Southeast Asian countries, the importance of the energy market or countries like the Dominican Republic that have used the tourism sector as a springboard to for clean energy in specific areas of the country and to increase productivity and so forth. So I think this report provides, as usual, but in this particular case, a clear roadmap for countries and for investors to understand each other's bottlenecks and possible solutions. So I'll stop here and I look forward to the discussion.
Okay. Uh, Amelia, thank you very much for the report, and it's always a good read. So I'm sure many people have just printed it out and started reading it. We were doing it while following your presentation, also for all the details you pointed out. So thank you very much. Thank you for this large endeavor, which is also guiding everyone. And the most important thing is pointing out the global disparities in performance, because when we talk about the Paris Agreement, all these sustainable development targets, those NDCs are not going to realize themselves. So we need to do something. And this is what the UN leaders are urging us to do for all the international events and reports. So it is heard, it is well taken, and we believe that the sense of urgency is also increasing, but there is much to be done. One thing that we were in our previous sessions, we were talking about the post-COVID deterioration on investment policies. We were really wondering whether many of them would be stable, and it is going to be. No, it's good that we heard the investment policies are also improving, and then we are going back to normal. And the sustainability themed funds and finances, we've been working on that a lot lately, and it's good that we see progress on this one. The gap is big, the finance gap is big, but at least the finance sector is responding to that. And also many startups, many innovative industries, funds are rearranging their fund structures to respond to those needs. But the greenwashing is a big problem. Maybe it is one thing that we should work more on to make the reporting best practices as mainstream implementations for everyone, so that we know what is reported is correct. And for the energy, yes, much more is needed. But what the report points out, as you suggested, is the discrepancy between the need and FDI attractiveness of the countries. So it is bringing us back to the situation that it's a global problem. So if we want to reach global results in Paris Agreement targets, we need to improve the financing mechanisms for those least developed countries or the countries who are in need of FDI most, to increase their energy investments. And because relying more on their own resources is not going to help a lot to the solution. And your partnerships focus and the PPP projects and working with international finance institutions, that is also important, because sometimes you also mentioned there are some bad experiences from the past, but it is not the model, it is how you implement it. So we need to be more careful about how we utilize those models and utilize them as much as possible, because financing mechanisms are still going through those models of financing. So that's a good warning for everyone. Thank you very much. And the connection between sectors was the last important thing you mentioned in your presentation. Thank you for making it so brief. You touched upon everything. We are going to read it and go back to you. So if you allow us to do, there are some questions that we would like to channel to you. And when
Yes,
we
of
look at
course.
the questions, like they are very informed questions, like many of our audience are following us for such a long time. And the first one is reflecting a worry. Like COVID-19 has become a major factor in many key metrics of 2021. Do you believe that this pandemic has caused lasting changes to global FDI markets in 22 and forward? Although it's currently too early to assess global data for 2023, do you expect these changes to endure in the long run? When we remember the past highs in global FDI inflows, we saw 1.7 billion, 1.8 billion. So everyone wanted to be them, the normals. Now we are around 1.3, 1.4. What do you foresee? It's a general question, but we would like to hear your sense.
That's a good question, and it's good that COVID was mentioned as a driver of instability and as a external shock to FDI. But now we have to realize that we are living in a world of multiple crises. So once we were recovering from COVID, from the shock of the pandemic, and then the global value chains and international production happened to resume its course, then we had the war in Ukraine, which has had an impact on global markets, on energy prices, which are naturally not only drive inflation in general, but also affect sectors like food security and also the cost of production. So we are moving from global pandemic and never seen in modern history to a multitude of crises. So basically, as I said, we have moved from 1.735 going around, but we will see this. I will not give you a number because we don't have a number, but the prospects are cautious. We have to be cautious, and we have to show a cautious optimism, especially because the impact on the real economy is not only the impact of investors' decision, but also the global GDP slowdown, the slowdown in major economies, inflation. So all these tangible issues might have a bearing on FDI. So, but given the response that investment announcements in sectors like renewable energy is showing positive signs, so that's why we move from pessimistic to cautious positive, in the sense that at least the sustainability agenda is driving a momentum in global investment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. No, that is very clear. And without giving you numbers, that is the much that you said. Another question is kind of a follow-up question to this one, but it is focusing on the effect of the global political crisis, especially after the war on Ukraine. The energy and the sustainable development community was worried about whether our exit from coal is going to be postponed, and the renewable energy investments are going to be affected too much from this energy security issues that countries are really thinking and implementing also. Actually, you answered it partly by saying that the impact is not as much as anticipated to begin with, but can you a little bit elaborate on this one, please?
No, I think it's a very valid point, and it has different elements of it. One is the investment element, one is the global economy, and the other is the policy element. So one area that I didn't touch because of time in the report is how much national policy is responding on this. For example, if we look at subsidies, fossil fuel subsidies are 8 times the amount of renewable energy subsidies. So this is a matter of concern. So there are issues related to policy making that have to be still countries have to address. The other issue is that although some countries are companies are divesting from dirty assets, but we don't know where this divestment is going. If it's reinventing itself, or so the issue of divestment is something that we look into the report. So definitely the cost of the rise in inflation has had an impact and a possible slowdown of the transition. This is real, and we look at that in the report. The good news is that because for some countries it's still, even fossil fuels is still expensive, there is the possibility of leapfrogging to clean energy. So in terms of national policy, I think fossil fuel subsidies reach a record level, which is a matter of concern, and they represent a disincentive for the transition. So this is something that we have to look at, and also to track is when we discuss the capital markets, we worried about greenwashing, but then when we look at investors' decision, divestment, where this is real, these assets have been offset, whether they are decommissioned or these are sort of reinventing itself as fossil fuel investment elsewhere. So but these are valid concerns, and these are issues that we look in the report, as I said, through the analysis of investors' decision, investment, divestment, and also through the policy angle. In addition to the cost brought about by the war in Ukraine, that is the high price of oil.
Okay. Okay. And based on our time constraint, the last question that I'm going to channel to you is actually aiming to, I guess, renewing our faith in the best practices in FDI attractive investment environment. You are in your studies, you are comparing or at least investigating the implementations of many countries. Some of them are best practices, some of them are underperforming, let's say.
Yes.
So, what can you say as a general comment? What should the countries do, or what the best performers do or did in last year to increase their FDI attractiveness and FDI performance?
This is a fantastic question. I mean, we don't go into, we look, of course, we present what are the top recipients of investment in the renewable energy. Some of them is because of the comparative advantages, that is, they have the natural resources, other because of the policies in place, other because of partnerships, and or the role of, for example, regional banks in the region. So there are different components that drive the top 10 countries that attract investment. But as we said, and if I go back to my the issues, what are the incentives provided to investors? And the institutional setting matters. What type of what is the rule of law? What is what are the goals? Many countries have decarbonization goals by 2030, which are not realistic because they don't have the resources. So having a clear investment planning in tandem with the energy transition for us is a prerequisite for countries to attract, because then you will have the deal with the regulatory issues in your planning. It is in the planning process. Also, the issue to regulators, the pricing. How is the pricing setting in country X in comparison to country Y, and what are the fiscal tools available? So this is very important. And then when we go to the economics, is the cost of capital, something that's one of our key contributions of the report. Why drives the cost of capital, and all these regulatory issues matter, but also the technological. We have seen examples of very tiny micro islands, small islands that had a readiness assessment of how to utilize natural resources, but also how to plan for the resources they don't have. And there are the issues of intermittency issues and technologies, what technologies are available, and the availability of technical and human capital. And this is another area where organizations like yours or international organizations and multilateral banks can play a role in helping with because sometimes the countries have the natural resources, but they don't have the tools to prepare the project. And issues, I mean, I can do a long list, but the infrastructure matters, and not only the current, but the foreseen infrastructure, including transmission lines, storage, and so on. So technical, economic, regulatory, and environmental.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all the engaging questions and your valuable insights, Amelia. And due to time limitations, we will stop forwarding further questions for now, but we'll be in touch to provide the details as we read the report. And Ms. Santos, Paulina, Amelia, we truly appreciate your detailed presentation and the insightful comments you've shared with us today. Thank you very much for your expertise and valuable contribution. We will carefully study this comprehensive report. We highly recommend all our stakeholders follow up on this publication, as it really provides holistic perspective on issues related to global trade and investments. So it's such an appreciated report. And please convey our greetings to all these esteemed members of the UNCTAD team, including Secretary General Rebecca Greenspan, Director James Zahn, and our dear friend Richard Baldwin. And before closing, I'll just make small announcements related to our Global Investment Days initiative. Following this excellent report presentation, we have planned 3 more webcasts. The first one will feature Mr. Ahmet Burak Dağlıoğlu, President of the Presidency Investment Office, to evaluate Turkey's FDI performance and policies with a forward-looking perspective. Next webcast will host our colleagues from OECD and FDI Intelligence about their recent reports about the FDI performance and hot topics in these areas. And lastly, our energy group is going to come together, especially with the theme of this UNCTAD report. And we'll be in touch with Amelia also at this occasion. Again, thank you very much. It was a great pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me, and see you all at the World Investment Forum in October.
Okay. See you
Thank you
soon.
very
So
much.
thank you for all our audience for being with us today. We'll be together with the details of this valuable report. Just keep in touch, stay healthy, stay safe, and take care. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.